بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. So inshallah today we're going to continue with the next part of zakah, and that is the mas'ala where we ended off is the mas'ala when it comes now to a very important mas'ala, and that is the zakah of trading assets, the zakah of trading assets. So basically you get two types. This is called first, before that, urud at-tijara. Then so you get two types of your assets. The first type is called urud at-tijara, and the second type is called urud al-qunya. Urud al-qunya. So urud al-qunya are those assets a person has that's not for sale. That's not for sale. That generally he doesn't have, they're not there by him for sale. They for generally usage or keeping, whatever it may be, but not for sale. And the asl, the default of things is qunya, not tijara. That's important to remember for something we're going to mention a bit later. So the default of things is they are urud qunya, not urud tijara. So urud qunya, it's like you have clothes, you have your house that you live in, you have things in your house like furniture, you have your car that you use, you have your cell phone that you use. All of these things, they are urud qunya. They are urud qunya. Things that you want to sell, then they are urud tijara. Urud tijara. So that's very important to remember when it comes to the difference between urud qunya and urud tijara. We said the asl of urud is that they are qunya, not tijara. There's one exception, and that is for gold and silver. For gold and silver, it itself or jewelry, etc. The asl for these things is that they are for purposes of transacting. So their asl is urud tijara. What takes it to urud qunya is specifically jewelry, because jewelry would have a sun'ah, meaning there would be some manufacturing involved. That's number one, manufacturing involved. And the second thing, we need to find both to make it not be urud tijara, or if not urud tijara, gold and silver is given zakah on it being connected to gold and silver with currencies. So the second thing you need is that the gold or silver is this jewelry, it's manufactured into jewelry, and then there is intention, its purpose is for usage or for lending out, personal usage or for lending out, even if you have not lended it out yet or used it yet. So the difference between the urud al-qunya and urud tijara we mentioned, and we said the asl, the default of your urud is that they are urud qunya, not tijara. And gold and silver, the asl is urud tijara, and they become urud qunya when those two things are found. When those two things are found, then they become urud qunya. So when we say gold and silver are urud tijara, I mean that in a loose manner, because if we have the gold and silver and they are jewelry specifically, then they may have a different, the Nisaab or what we look at for this may be different to, or will be different to how we look at these things if they were just deemed gold or silver. Like haram jewelry, for example, we won't look at its worth, we won't look at any of these things. We look at how much of gold is in it or how much of silver is in it. Does it reach the nisab, or we add it onto our gold or silver that we have? But if they are urud tijara, if they are for trading, then we look at the worth of this necklace or this watch, etc., which will be higher than its gold or silver value, The other difference, as we mentioned, is that gold and silver, if they are for trading purposes, most likely the gold and silver would be your jewelry. If they are for trading purposes, because normal gold or silver, just pieces of gold or silver, they don't have extra worth in it other than the gold or silver. You pay the gold or silver price. But other things, they have the manufacturing. the sun'ah, the manufacturing in it that increases the price. So for gold and silver, when they, mainly jewelry, when they are used for transactions, when they're used for trading, then the nisab is, we won't say gold jewelry is gold, the nisab of it is gold. We'd say gold or silver jewelry is what we're going to mention just now when it comes to the rest of urud al-tijara. So that's one mas'ala important to remember when it comes to urud al-tijara. I'm going to read what the Shaykh says, and then we'll mention another important mas'ala of urud al-tijara, and then the last couple of masail connected to it. So the Shaykh says, وَأَمَّا عُرُوضُ التِّجَارَةِ وَهُوَ كُلُّ مَا أُعِدَّ لِلْبَيْعِ وَالشِّرَاءِ لِأَجْلِ الرِّبْحِ. So the Shaykh says that this which we called عُرُوضُ التِّجَارَة, it is everything that is up for sale. أُعِدَّ لِلْبَيْعِ, up for sale. So that's our first clue to what is عُرُوض تِجَارَة. Okay? Then the Shaykh says, لِأَجْلِ الرِّبْحِ. You selling this item for the purpose of making a profit. You selling it for the purpose of making a profit. That item falls into our aspect of zakah. Therefore, if you're selling something to get rid of it, you're not wanting to make a profit, you just want to get rid of the item. It's not part of your assets that you're going to calculate your zakah on. If you're selling something to get rid of it to pay your debt, you just want some funds to pay your debt, you don't count this thing as part of urud al-tijara. So your main thing is at-takassub. You want to sell this to transact. You're selling this to make a profit, to use that money to buy something else, to sell that. That is what is urud al-tijara. That is what is urud al-tijara. Now, we said urud al-tijara, the asl, the default of urud is urud qunya. Qunya means those things, as we said, that they are almost things you have that are almost for personal use. Or we can expand it, which we should, and that is that they are not for sale. They are not for sale. So therefore, if you have a building, irrespective of its price, but you want it, irrespective of its worth, but you want to use it to rent out. So here, this doesn't count as urud tijara because you're not selling it, so it's not counting as urud tijara. It's part of urud qunya. Now, we said the asl is qunya. The asl is qunya, the default is qunya. Now here's a qaaidah throughout fiqh, and that is that when we say something is the asl in certain situations, then for us to change this thing from being the asl, we need two things. We need intention and we need action. We need intention and action. But if something is not the asl and we want to make it the asl again, we just need intention. That is a very important thing that I've explained here for urud al-tijara. And before I mention that, here's a simple example. We say a person in terms of his salah, in terms of him being a traveler or a resident, the asl for that person is iqamah, is him being a muqim, him being a resident. So now, to change this aspect of being a resident, of iqamah, to him being musafir, we need two things. We need intention. He has to intend a journey. That's why the fuqaha say, if a person just went out, he just decided, I'm going for a drive. Where I end up is where I end up. This person, even if he went half the world, he'd not be allowed to shorten the salah. Because he didn't have the intention. Somebody went out looking for something. He's gone to look for his stolen car. So he's driving. Time of salah comes, he looks, he's done 200 kilometers. We say to him, you cannot shorten the salah because you didn't have intention. And the asl is iqamah, the default is being a resident, so intention is needed and you need action. So a person who is a resident, if he intends, I'm going to travel in 10 minutes, and a salah comes in, or let's say half an hour, I'm going to travel for half an hour, and he intends a far place, and the salah comes in, let's say dhuhr comes in. Is he allowed to shorten the salah? The answer is no. Because to change from the asl, you need two things. Intention is there. But you need action. Action means he leaves the place of residence. He goes out of his town. When you have intention and action, then that now changes the asl. Flip it the other way. A person is a musafir. He's a traveler. But he's a traveler and he thinks, let me start living in this place. Randomly he thinks, let me start living in this place. So he intends the asl. He intends iqamah. He intends to be a resident. So here what we would say, at the next salah, or if it is a salah that can be shortened and you're going to pray it, you have to pray it in full. Because it's as if you are at home. It's as if you are at home. Because to go back to the asl, you just need intention. You just need intention. Therefore, when it comes to urud, the asl is qunya. Therefore, for it to be tijara, we need intention and action. We need intention and action. Just intention would not make it tijara. Right? Just intention would not make it tijara. Therefore, what would we say? We say intention and action can happen mainly let's start it like this. A person will gain his asset or his money for his asset. Let's say his asset. He gains his asset through, at this point, the first point, him gaining ownership of this asset. It has to be with amalut tijara. It has to be with an action that is deemed an action of transacting. An action of transacting. So the fuqaha say you have the action of transacting is you have mu'amala mahdha and ghayr mahdha and qabul fi tabarru'at and istirad. So you have four things that are deemed the action of tijara, the action of transacting. If you own this item through these four ways that I'm going to explain, if at that moment you have the intention to transact with this, to sell this, then this thing immediately forms part of urud tijara. If you gained, so let's go and explain those things. So number one, you got it, you earned this thing with buying it. You bought it. Or it was a rental. They paid you with an asset. Then this is mu'amala, that I'm forgetting the actual term, but it's a pure form of a transaction. It's a pure transaction. Or a transaction that is not pure but takes the rule of a transaction. And that is, if you got this item as, if you're female, as a mahar, or as a male for khul'. You got this for khul', meaning as mahar, the dowry. You paid your wife to be your wife. The mahar was in kind, not in cash. This car is a mahar for you. This building is a mahar for you. Okay? If at that point she intends, I want to sell the car, immediately urud, tijara, she counts it for zakah. Then the third situation, or khul'. Khul' is when a lady pays the man something in return for a divorce. I say it like that because it can be talaq sometimes and it can be khul' sometimes. We may have touched on it in the past, but for time we're not going to mention it here. So this man got an asset as khul', so then he wants to sell it. At that moment he has his intention and action. So then it's changed from urud qunya. The third situation is where you are gifted something, or a wasiyah, somebody wrote a wasiyah for you. These things also form part of the action of transacting. Amalut tijara. Why? Because it needs some action from you, which is qabul. You have to accept this thing. You accept the gift. Before acceptance of the gift, the person can go back on what he wants to gift you. Or while he's alive, he can go back on his wasiyah. After his death, now you can accept the wasiyah. The last thing is, you sold something to somebody, you sold this asset to somebody, right? And then there was, for some reason, the transaction got cancelled and you got it back. there was a defect or something in this asset, in this car that you sold or watch that you sold, and therefore it came back to you. So now we say that this is also part of urud al-tijara if you intended it. And we spoke about the hawl. The hawl in urud al-tijara, it doesn't break from cash to asset to cash to asset to asset to cash to cash to asset. The hawl does not break. Okay, so that is with regards to urud tijara. When you get ownership of it, we spoke of intention, when you get ownership of it, and the amal al-tijara, so you do the amal. Now, if you gain ownership of this asset in a manner that is not amal al-tijara, then what happens here? Then when do we say the amal comes? What are examples of not amal al-tijara? You inherited an asset, because in inheritance there's no qabul. Once the person dies, a portion of his wealth belongs to you. There's no two ways about it. You are the owner. You can gift it to somebody else, you can do whatever you want with it, but that wealth, a portion of it which eventually will be divided, that belongs to you. If he had a car and you are the only heir, that car is yours. Meaning that's very loose explanation, or that's just by way of example for the inheritance, not really with the fiqh behind it. But the point is, you own this asset from inheritance. Or there was talaq before husband and wife being in seclusion. So then the mahr becomes half. The husband has no choice. He owns half of the mahr. He can then decide, no, keep the mahr, whatever he wants to do, but he owns half. So that entered into his ownership, if it was an asset, without him having a say. Another example is luqata. If a person found something that was lost, that was valuable and lost, and he took it, and then he announced that there's a lost item. He did all the steps that the fuqaha mentioned, and then after 1 year, no person came to claim this item. We say this item is his. It enters into his wealth. They say qahran. He has no chance. He has no option, and then this is his, but not amal al-tijara. So then, a person in this situation, if that's a situation. So we apply that's one thing, and this thing I'm going to say, the rule is the same. Let's say that's the situation. So it's not amal al-tijara is not found. Or a person has something that he uses, his cell phone, his car, his personal car. Now he wants to sell. Or that thing he inherited, or with the mahr, now he wants to sell. So now he has the intention of tijara. So far we found no amal, we only found intention. Here the fuqaha say merely intention. This is the mashhur of the madhab. Merely intention does not make it part of urud al-tijara. So here if you intend it, there's no zakah on it. You don't add it to your asset, to your trading assets. Once you sell it and you gain the money, that money now falls into what you'd pay zakah on. So one intention here is not enough. Once you do the amal, then that amal is selling the item. Then that money that you get in, then that money you can apply it on zakah. Then that money can become zakatable in what we've mentioned, in the manner we've mentioned, or similarly to what we're going to mention in a couple moments. So that's very important with urud al-tijara. That's basically, we've mentioned 3 of the many important masail of urud al-tijara. The last one, just to complete that one there, we said that the asl of urud is qunya, except gold and silver. So gold and silver, if you have jewelry, it's not zakatable. Now you intend to sell it. Now here, to make it come to the asl, you just need intention. So for gold and silver, that jewelry, the moment you've intended it for selling, now you include it in your zakah of trading assets. Then the Shaykh says, فَإِنَّهُ يُقَوَّمُ إِذَا حَالَ الْحَوْلِ بِالْأَحَظِّ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ مِنْ ذَهَبٍ أَوْ فِضَّةٍ. Okay. So let's go to 2 things. We'll go with the second thing the Shaykh mentions, and then we'll go to the first thing, which is a very, if not the most, the other masail I mentioned are very important, but if not the most important one, and then we'd be done with urud al-tijara. So the Shaykh says that the Nisaab for urud al-tijara, the Nisaab for your trading assets, we're going to mention how to calculate and value them. But then the Nisaab you take for this is, you see the value in your currency of 595 grams of silver or 85 grams of gold. The lower of the two, that's the Nisaab you work with. Most of the time it will be silver. That will be your Nisaab. If your trading assets come to that amount or more, then you give zakah on them. If they are less, then no zakah. So that's important to know. How do you value it? So even with gold and silver, the Nisaab of gold is not the Nisaab, the gold that you have, you not calculate its Nisaab on the Nisaab of gold. You calculate it on the Nisaab of the lesser of the two. The last thing, if you have items that are haram, like we mentioned, gold and silver, that are, let's say, utensils. So here there's a worth of it for its gold and also for the manufacturing, for the sunnah. Here we say the sunnah muharramah فوجودها كعدمها. So therefore its presence, this manufacturing, this thing itself is haram, so it's as if it's not manufactured. It's as if the manufacturing is not there. So you just see the gold or the silver. As we mentioned in better detail in the last dars. The last mas'ala with the urud al-tijara is how do you value your trading assets. So the fuqaha say that on the day of zakah, I'm going to mention three things that you can do any one of the three and it will be valid. Okay? So the fuqaha say that on the day of zakah, your first option is that you take your stock. As you value your stock. What would the stock sell today? What would you sell this stock today? What would the value be? But which value? The value of it if you were to wholesale these items. If you were to sell these items, wholesale these items, then you calculate it on that worth, on that price. That's what many fuqaha say. The other option is, and also based on that, if a person were to value it, and he was not a wholesaler, he was a retailer, he were to value his items, if he were to sell these items today on the market value, on the retail market value, not the wholesale market value. If he were to sell these things, not buy these things as a retailer or as a seller, he were to, as a buyer, he were not to value it as if he bought the stock. He values it as if he sold the stock. What would he sell the stock today? The value of the stock, not his asking price, not the price he wants, and also not the price, the cost price. So not the price he paid for. That the fuqaha mentioned clearly. In fact, some of the mashayikh say that, I've not checked it up, but some of them say that there's almost all agreement, unanimous, there's ittifaq, there's unanimity that you don't look at the cost price. But this Shaykh mentioned that some of the contemporary scholars, the mu'asirin, say that Abu Yusuf had the opinion that you look at the cost price. Abu Yusuf from the Hanafi scholars. But most of them say you don't look at the cost price. So not the cost price, and in this explanation, not the selling price. What would the value be? The market value of this item if you were to sell it today, right? We said one, even if you're a retailer, you value it at wholesale price. If you were to wholesale this, that you value it like that. If you are a retailer and you valued it at your retail price or at the retail value, if you were to sell it today, the retail value, many ulama say that would be fine as well. So that's one option how to value it. If you have items that you sell on retail and wholesale, then you can take the medium of the two. You can take the middle price of the two. So that's what some of them say. You can take the middle of the price. Let's say you have one item, for example. Its retail price is 100, its wholesale price is 70. So then you can take 85. You take 85. Others say that in this case you see which which do you sell more? Do you sell most of your stock more on wholesale or more stock on retail? Then in this case, you value them all according to which you sell more. If you sell more items on retail, value them all at the retail price, at the retail value. And the same with if you were to wholesale. But many of them also say what I said first. And that is, even if you're a retailer, you value it at your wholesale price. The other option, which many ulama say may be even better, and that is you take the selling price. On your day of zakah, you see how much am I selling these items. Take your stock, the selling price, and then if it's more than the Nisaab, you're going to include it into your other things, or 2.5% from there, as we'll explain. So that's another option. You can do that. And sometimes that could be better. And sometimes maybe not better. Let's say you are selling this on a selling price below the market value. Below the market. When I say selling price, that means the wholesaler at his price, the retailer at his price, what you're selling it for, you use that value. Right? And that would be excluding VAT. For the businessman, excluding VAT. So sometimes you're selling it at a price less than the market value. So then if you were to sell this item, you'd get less than the market value. So if the cash came in, the zakah you pay on it is less than had you valued the item on market value. So perhaps you could say it would be more fair or fairer to the businessman to use here the selling price. He'd not be cheated and he'd not be cheating the poor. And if he's selling more than the market value, if he were to sell it, then he'd get more than the market value. So if he'd valued his things at market value, then he'd be paying, at the money come in, he'd actually have paid less zakah on what he valued than what came in. So perhaps that's one of the main reasons why the selling price is better. But a person can gauge what would be fair for him and for the poor, because the poor have a right to your wealth. For example, a person has his stock, he's selling them way more than market value, but he knows he's open for discounts, he can bring it down, he won't really get this price that he's asking. So in that case, you can say, use the market value to evaluate your stock. Use that. And sometimes a person his stock, some are below market value, some are above, it's up and down. So here you could say, perhaps use the market value. And that would give you like an approximation of an average amount, because some you're selling below and some you're selling above. So therefore, that's an option when you can decide which one is better to use. But any one of the two that I mentioned so far, that would be fine. The third option that some of the fuqaha say is that you value your items. If somebody came to you today, on the day of zakah, and asked, I want to buy all your stock right now, what price would you give me? So we're speaking of a person who he's not in desperation to sell his stock. So he's not going to give the lowest price, but he's in, so they say not the muttar, not the person in desperation to sell out and to sell his stock and go, then that is the price. What would he sell all of his items now? That is the price you take into consideration. What would you value your stock and give him the price to buy it right now? Take that value, and that would be the value of your trading stock. So you can do any of the three. So when we say trading stock, we're referring to things that are on the final product. Or we can say things that will reach the customer. So therefore, you may have things in your factory or in your business. You have fridges, you have other things that are to store your things. You have machinery to manufacture your things. All of those things are not zakatable. Because we said those things for zakah are those things that you are going to sell. Those things that you are going to sell. These things are not for sale. But they may be items that are part of the final product. If you're selling perfumes and you're going to pour the perfumes into little bottles, those things are going to reach the customer. If you've not considered it into the final price of your perfume, meaning into your calculation for zakah, because you may have used just the perfume, then you have to include it. Because it will essentially reach the customer. Otherwise, if you already included it in your price, then that's done. There's one situation where some ulama mention that you pay zakah, you value your things on the cost price. And that is when you've placed an order for things and you've paid for it. You've placed an order for certain items, you're waiting for it to be manufactured, and you've paid for it. Then here in this case, you pay on the cost price. Because if the transaction cancels, you're going to get the money you paid for back. So that's the money you're valuing on your as your zakah. And if the items come, then it's only once it comes that now you can see a selling price. So while you are waiting, if your zakah day comes, then you give zakah on the cost price of these things. You include it as the cost price. That's some of the main, most important masail with regards to zakah of trading assets. Zakah of trading assets. And that's in summary with regards to these masail. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to teach us that which benefits us, and to benefit us with that which He teaches us. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.